The stranger's hand closed around my wrist the second I perched on his lap, and I knew, with sudden, ice-cold clarity, that I'd made a terrible mistake. His cologne was dark and expensive. His suit probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, and when his eyes locked onto mine, every sound in the hotel bar seemed to fade, except for the thunder of my own pulse. "You have 5 seconds," he said, his voice low and controlled in a way that made my stomach drop, "to tell me who sent you." I opened my mouth to explain about the dare, about my drunk coworkers giggling at the bar, about how I'd thought this would be harmless and funny. But that's when the doors burst open and a man in a tailored coat walked in with 4 security guards, his face going purple with rage the instant he saw me. The stranger's grip on my wrist tightened, and I felt his thumb press against my racing pulse as he murmured against my ear, "Don't move, don't speak, and if you want to survive the next 5 minutes, you'll do exactly what I say." That's when I realized the coworkers who dared me to sit on this man's lap had already vanished, and I was utterly, catastrophically alone. "Bianchi," the older man spat, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. "Is this some kind of joke?" The stranger beneath me, Bianchi, didn't flinch. His hand stayed locked on my wrist, his other arm settling around my waist with a possessiveness that sent heat flooding through my body despite the terror clawing up my throat. I tried to slide off his lap, but his grip tightened just enough to keep me exactly where I was. "Don Ricci," Bianchi said, his tone perfectly calm. "You're early." "Early?" The older man took 3 steps forward, and his security detail moved with him like sharks scenting blood. "I walk in to finalize my daughter's engagement, and I find you with some—" He gestured at me with pure contempt. "Some nobody in your lap." I should have explained. Should have stammered out the truth about the dare, about the $50, about how stupid and reckless I'd been after 2 vodka sodas on an empty stomach. But Bianchi's thumb was still pressed against my pulse, and something in the way he held me made the words die in my throat. "She's not a nobody," Bianchi said quietly. The room went absolutely still. Don Ricci stared at us, his face shifting from purple to white. "What did you just say?" Bianchi's hand moved from my wrist to thread through my fingers, and the gesture was so intimate, so deliberate, that my heart stuttered. "I said she's not a nobody, she's my fiancée, and she's the reason I asked you here tonight." My vision swam. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "Your fiancée," Don Ricci repeated, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "You asked me here to finalize the terms of your marriage to my daughter Bianca. The marriage that's been planned for 6 months. The marriage that's supposed to end 30 years of bad blood between our families. I know what the marriage was supposed to do." Bianchi's voice stayed level, but I felt the tension coil through his body. "And I'm telling you it's not happening. Not—" Don Ricci took another step forward, and one of his guards moved with him, hands sliding inside his jacket. "You're calling off the engagement? 3 days before we sign the contracts?" "Yes." The single word dropped like a bomb. My mouth had gone completely dry. I wanted to scream that this was insane, that I didn't even know this man, that I worked in accounting for God's sake, and my biggest concern an hour ago had been whether my probation review next week would go well enough to keep my job. But Bianchi's fingers were laced through mine now, his grip firm and warm, and when I tried to pull away, his thumb stroked across my knuckles in a gesture that looked almost tender. "Because of her?" Don Ricci's gaze raked over me with open disgust. "Because of some girl you've got warming your lap in a hotel bar?" "Because she matters more than a contract," Bianchi said, and something in his voice made the air feel thinner. Don Ricci went very still. "Your father broke an engagement for love 30 years ago, and it nearly destroyed both families. You swore you'd never repeat his mistake. You spent years rebuilding what he threw away. And now you're doing the exact same thing." "Yes." The single word landed like a death sentence. "Then you're a fool," Don Ricci said, his voice shaking now, just like he was. "And when this falls apart, when your pretty little distraction here gets bored or scared or dead, you'll have nothing left. No allies, no peace, no future." "Maybe," Bianchi said, his grip tightening on my hand. "But Bianca deserves someone who wants to marry her, not someone fulfilling a contract. Tell her I'm sorry, but the engagement is off." The word came out flat and final, and I realized with dawning horror that Bianchi wasn't bluffing. He was selling this. He was making Don Ricci believe that I mattered, that I was worth breaking a political marriage over, and I had absolutely no idea why. "Spare me the chivalry, Bianchi," Don Ricci snapped. "This is the real world, not a romance movie. Men like us don't get to blow up alliances because our hearts flutter. You think talking about what my daughter deserves changes what you've done?" He stared at us for a long moment, and I watched his face cycle through rage, disbelief, and something that looked almost like grief. Then he turned on his heel and walked out, his security detail following like a military unit. The doors slammed shut behind them. The silence that followed felt like standing in the eye of a hurricane. Bianchi's hand loosened on mine, and I scrambled off his lap so fast I nearly tripped over my own heels. My legs felt like jelly. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. And when I turned to face him, the words came out in a rush. "What the hell was that?" He stood slowly, adjusting his cuffs, with the kind of calm that made me want to scream. Up close, he was even more devastating. Dark hair, sharp jaw, eyes that seemed to see straight through me. He had to be in his mid-30s, and he wore power the way other men wore cologne. "That," he said evenly, "was me saving your life." "Saving my—" I choked on the words. "I don't even know you. I don't even know your name. My coworkers dared me to sit on a stranger's lap for $50, and now you've just, blown up your entire engagement because I was drunk and stupid?" "Darian Bianchi," he said, watching me carefully. "And you are?" "Julia Reed," I said automatically, then immediately wanted to take it back. Why was I giving him my real name? "Julia." The way he said it made my stomach flip. "Your coworkers are gone." His gaze flicked toward the bar, which was now conspicuously empty, except for one bartender who was studiously polishing glasses and pretending we didn't exist. "They left the second Ricci walked in. Did you notice that?" I hadn't. I'd been too busy trying not to die of embarrassment and terror. "They set you up," Bianchi continued, his voice dropping lower. "Someone paid them to get you onto my lap right when Ricci arrived. This wasn't a harmless dare, Julia. This was a message." My stomach dropped. "A message? From who?" "That's what I'm going to find out." He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly, then slid it back into his pocket. "But right now, we have a bigger problem." "Bigger than you just calling off your wedding to a Mafia princess?" His mouth twitched, almost like he wanted to smile. "Yes, because as of 5 minutes ago, you're my fiancé, which means Ricci's family is going to come after you to send me a message, and the people who set you up are going to try again to finish whatever they started." I took a step back, shaking my head. "No, absolutely not. I'm not your fiancé. I'm not part of your world. And I'm going back to my apartment in Queens and pretending this never happened." "You can't. Watch me." I turned toward the exit, but before I'd taken 2 steps, his hand closed around my elbow, not rough, but firm enough to stop me. "Julia," his voice was softer now, and when I looked back at him, something in his expression had shifted. "If you walk out of here alone, you'll be dead before you reach the subway." The words hit me like ice water. "I'll have 2 of my men follow you home tonight," he continued. "Tomorrow, you're taking the day off work." "I can't take the day off," I snapped, yanking my arm free. "I'm 3 weeks away from the end of my probation period. If I miss a day without notice, I could lose my job. And if I lose my job, my mother doesn't get her medication, and my brother doesn't stay in school, and we lose our apartment. So no, I can't just take the day off because you decided to use me as a human shield in your Mafia drama." He studied me for a long moment, and I hated that even now, terrified and furious, I couldn't stop noticing the way his gaze felt like a physical touch. "You work here?" he asked finally. "In the corporate office upstairs. I'm a junior accountant for the hotel group." Something shifted in his expression, calculation, maybe, or recognition. "Then you're already in my world, Julia. This hotel, this bar, this entire building, I own it." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. "You, what?" "The Langham Manhattan is one of 12 properties in my portfolio," he said. "Which means you work for me. Which means keeping you safe just became a lot simpler." I stared at him, my mind racing through every rumor I'd ever half heard about the building's ownership. every whispered conversation in the break room about private investors and silent partners. "I need to go," I whispered. "Not alone, you don't." "Then send your security or whatever, but I can't," my voice cracked. "I can't be here right now." He nodded once, then pulled out his phone again and made a call. "Bring the car around, back entrance. And I want 2 men on her building in Queens tonight. Discreet, no contact unless there's a threat." He hung up and looked at me. "My driver will take you home. 2 of my men will watch your apartment tonight. Tomorrow morning, you'll come to my office before you go upstairs to yours, and we're going to figure out who set you up and why." "And if I refuse?" His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made my breath catch. "Then you're gambling with your life, and I don't think you're that reckless." Drunk dares aside, I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him to go to hell and walk out with my head high. But my hands were shaking, and I kept thinking about Don Ricci's face, about the way his guards had moved like they were ready for violence, about how easily this man, Darian Bianchi, had rewritten my entire existence with a single lie. "Fine," I said, "but this ends tomorrow. You figure out who set this up, you clear my name, and then I'm done. We'll see." The way he said it made me sure of one thing. Darian Bianchi had no intention of letting me go, and God help me, part of me didn't want him to. The black SUV that took me home had leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. And the driver didn't ask for my address. He already knew it. That detail sat in my stomach like a stone all the way to Queens. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Don Ricci's face, heard Darian's voice saying she's my fiancée, like it was the most natural thing in the world. My phone sat on my nightstand, silent and accusing. I'd texted my mother that I'd be late, that work had run over, and she'd replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a reminder to take my vitamins. She had no idea her daughter had just become a fake fiancée to a mafia boss. At 6 a.m., I gave up on sleep, showered, and put on my most professional suit, a navy blue number from Target that I'd bought for job interviews. If I was walking into Darian Bianchi's office, I was doing it looking like someone who had her life together, even if that was a complete lie. The subway ride into Manhattan felt surreal. Normal people doing normal things, reading phones, drinking coffee, complaining about delayed trains. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out how to survive a meeting with a man who'd claim me as his in front of a room full of criminals. The Langham's lobby was already busy at 7:30. Guests checking out, staff moving with practiced efficiency. I'd walked through here hundreds of times, heading to the elevator bank that led to the corporate offices on the 12th floor. But today, I stopped at the concierge desk. "I'm here to see Darian Bianchi," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The concierge's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or warning. "Penthouse level. Private elevator at the end of the hall, past the ballrooms. He's expecting you." Of course he was. The private elevator required a key card, which the concierge handed me like I was supposed to have it. The ride up was smooth and silent, and when the doors opened, I stepped into a space that made my entire apartment look like a closet. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, the morning light turning the city gold. The furniture was all dark wood and leather, expensive and understated. A bar lined one wall, bottles arranged like art. And standing by the windows, phone to his ear, was Darian. He looked different in daylight. Still devastating, still dangerous, but more real somehow. His suit jacket was off, sleeves rolled to his elbows, and I could see the edge of a tattoo on his forearm, something dark and intricate that disappeared under the fabric. He glanced over as I stepped out of the elevator, held up one finger in a wait gesture, and finished his call. "No, I don't care what Ricci's people are saying. The engagement is off, and anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with me directly." He paused, listening. "Good. Keep me updated." He hung up and turned to face me fully. "You came," he said. "Did I have a choice?" "No." He almost smiled. "Coffee?" "I need answers more than caffeine." "You can have both." He moved to the bar, poured 2 cups from a machine that probably cost more than my student loans, and brought one to me. "Sit." I didn't want to sit. I wanted to demand explanations and then run back to my safe, boring life. but my legs were shaking, so I sank onto the leather couch and wrapped my hands around the coffee mug like it could anchor me. Darian sat across from me, close enough that I could smell his cologne again, that same dark, expensive scent that had wrapped around me in the bar. "Your co-workers," he said without preamble. "The ones who dared you. What are their names?" "Sarah Chen and Mike Walters. They're both in finance with me. Why?" "Because they were paid $5,000 each to set you up." He pulled out his phone, swiped through something, then turned it to show me a bank statement. The deposits hit their accounts 2 days ago. Same source, routed through 3 shell companies to hide the origin. My gut clenched hard enough to hurt. "You're saying someone paid them to, what? Get me to sit on your lap? To humiliate me in front of Ricci? To make it look like I was disrespecting the engagement, playing games while he was on his way to finalize the contracts?" Darian's voice was flat, controlled. "They didn't know you'd actually go through with the dare. They thought you'd refuse, or that I'd throw you off before Ricci arrived. But you did it, and I didn't have time to move you without making it worse. So you claimed me instead." "Yes." I set the coffee down before I dropped it. "Who would do this? Who would want to blow up your engagement?" "That's what we're going to find out." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough now that I could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "But first, I need to know if you're willing to help me." "Help you?" I almost laughed. "I'm a junior accountant who's 3 weeks from losing her job because she sat on the wrong man's lap. What could I possibly—" "You're an accountant," he cut in. "Which means you see patterns in numbers. And someone just moved $60 million through a series of offshore accounts connected to my hotels, making it look like I'm skimming from my own investors to fund a private war." The number hit me like a slap. 60 million? The transaction started 3 months ago. Small amounts at first, then escalating. Whoever's doing this is smart. They're using legitimate vendor payments and operational transfers to hide the theft. My finance team hasn't caught it yet, but I'm guessing you would. I stared at him. "You want me to investigate your own company's books? I want you to find out who's trying to destroy me. And in return, I'll make sure your job is secure, your probation review goes perfectly, and your family stays safe while this plays out." "And if I say no?" His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes made my breath catch. "Then you're still my fiancée as far as the world is concerned, which means you're still a target. The only difference is you'll be a target without my protection or my resources." I wanted to tell him to go to hell, wanted to walk out and take my chances, but he was right. I was already in this. The second I'd sat on his lap, I'd stepped into a world where people moved millions of dollars and paid off coworkers and called off weddings like they were canceling dinner reservations. "I'll need access to the full financial systems," I said finally. "Not just the reports your team runs. I need to see the raw transaction data." "Done." "And I need to keep my normal work schedule. If I suddenly start acting different or spending time in your office, people will notice. You'll work from here in the mornings before your shift. 2 hours, 6 to 8 a.m. My driver will pick you up." "I can take the subway." "No, you can't." His voice went hard. "As of last night, you're under protection. That means my driver, my security, my rules. Non-negotiable." I should have argued, should have fought for some shred of independence, but I kept thinking about $60 million, about Don Ricci's face, about the way Darian had said, "You'll be dead before you reach the subway," like it was a simple fact. "Fine," I said, "but I need something else." "Name it." "I need to talk to Bianca." He went very still. "Why?" "Because she's the one person in this mess who got hurt through no fault of her own. Because if I'm going to pretend to be your fiancé, I need to at least try to apologize. And because—" I met his gaze directly. "Because I'm not the kind of person who ruins someone's life and then hides from the consequences." Something shifted in his expression, something I couldn't quite read. "All right," he said finally. "I'll arrange it. But Julia, Bianca isn't soft. She's her father's daughter, and she's not going to forgive you just because you show up with an apology." "I know." "And you still want to do this?" "Yes." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "I'll set it up for tonight. Neutral ground, one of my restaurants. You, her, and me." "Just me and her," I corrected. If you're there, she'll think it's a power play. If I'm not there and she decides to hurt you, I can't stop it. Then I guess I'm taking that risk. His jaw tightened. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. He leaned back, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that looked almost frustrated. Bianca Ricci is 28, graduated top of her class from Yale Law, and has been groomed since birth to run her father's empire. She's smart, ruthless, and she doesn't forgive. The engagement wasn't just political for her. It was her proving she could handle a marriage alliance without letting emotions get in the way. And then you sat on my lap, and I threw it all away in front of her father. So she hates me. She wants to destroy you. The words hung in the air between us. I'm still going, I said. Why? His voice dropped lower, rougher. Why does this matter so much to you? Because I'm not a prop in your world, I said, my voice shaking now. I'm not some girl you can claim and protect and move around like a chess piece. If I'm going to survive this, I need to be someone who makes choices, not someone things happen to. And that starts with facing Bianca. Darian stared at me, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked genuinely surprised. All right, he said finally. Tonight, 7 p.m. But you're taking security whether you like it or not. Fine. And Julia? He leaned forward again, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. If anything goes wrong, if she threatens you or tries to hurt you, you walk out. Immediately. Understood? Understood, he nodded, but didn't move back. We stayed like that, too close, the space between us humming with something I refused to name. You should get to work, he said finally. Your shift starts in an hour. I stood, legs still unsteady, and made it halfway to the elevator before his voice stopped me. Julia, I turned back. Thank you, he said, for backing the lie last night. You could have told Ricci the truth, thrown me under, saved yourself, but you didn't. I didn't do it for you, I said. I did it because I was terrified, and you were the only one who looked like you knew what you were doing. Still, thank you. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just nodded and stepped into the elevator. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of him standing by the windows, backlit by the Manhattan skyline, looking like a man who ruled the world. And I realized, with a sinking feeling in my stomach, that I was starting to understand why. The meeting with Bianca was set for 7 p.m. at Sorella, an upscale Italian place in Tribeca that I could never afford on my salary. Darian's driver picked me up at 6:30, and I spent the entire ride trying not to throw up. I changed into the only other professional outfit I owned, a black sheath dress that my mother had bought me for graduation. It felt like armor, even though I knew Bianca could probably tell it was from Macy's clearance rack. The restaurant was the kind of place where they didn't list prices on the menu. Warm lighting, exposed brick, tables spaced far enough apart that conversations stayed private. A hostess led me to a corner booth where Bianca was already waiting. She was stunning. Dark hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, sharp cheekbones, eyes that assessed me in one sweep and found me wanting. She wore a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than my rent, and diamond studs that caught the light. Julia Reed, she said as I slid into the booth. Her voice was ice. The girl who destroyed my engagement. I didn't mean to. Save it. She didn't touch the wine glass in front of her, just stared at me with the kind of focus that made me feel like an insect under a microscope. You think showing up here with an apology changes anything? You think I'm supposed to feel sorry for you because you were drunk and stupid? No, I said, forcing myself to meet her gaze. I think you deserve to hear the truth. The truth? She laughed, sharp and bitter. The truth is that you sat on my fiancé's lap in a public bar, and he chose you over a 6-month negotiation. That's the only truth that matters. It was a dare, I said. My coworkers bet me $50 to sit on a stranger's lap. I was drunk, and I didn't know who Darian was. And then your father walked in. And Darian called off our engagement. She leaned forward, and there was nothing soft in her expression. Do you know what that cost me? Not just the alliance, not just the political fallout. My father looked at me like I was a failure, like I couldn't even keep a man interested long enough to sign a contract. I'm sorry. Your apology means nothing. She finally picked up her wine glass, took a slow sip. But I'll admit, I'm curious. Why would Darian throw everything away for someone like you? You're nobody, no family, no connections, no power. So either he's genuinely lost his mind, or... She stopped, eyes narrowing. Or what, I asked. Or someone wanted this to happen. Her fingers tapped against the wine glass, and I could see her mind working. You said it was a dare. Who set it up? My co-workers, Sarah Chen and Mike Walters. And they just randomly decided to dare you to sit on a stranger's lap? In that specific bar, at that specific time. A cold weight settled under my ribs. Darian said they were paid. $5,000 each. Someone wanted me on his lap right when your father arrived. Bianca went very still. Someone set this up. Yes. To make it look like Darian was disrespecting the engagement. To humiliate my father and blow up the alliance. She set down her glass. Who would benefit from our families going to war? I swallowed hard. I don't know. Do you? For a long moment, she just stared at me, and I could see the calculation in her eyes, weighing whether to trust me, whether I was part of the setup or just a pawn. The Sorrentinos, she said finally. Who are they? Forget it. She stood abruptly, smoothing her suit. This conversation is over. Wait, if someone manipulated both of us, don't you want to... What I want, Bianca cut in, her voice dropping to something dangerous, is for you to understand that this changes nothing. You may have been used, but you still destroyed something that mattered, and that insult will be repaid. She walked out before I could respond, moving through the restaurant like a queen leaving a battlefield. I sat there alone, my hands shaking, the name Sorrentinos echoing in my head. She'd almost believed me. I'd seen it in her eyes, the moment she'd realized this could be bigger than a drunken dare. But she wasn't ready to trust me, not yet. And her parting words felt like a promise and a threat all at once. Darian's driver took me home, and this time I noticed the second SUV following 3 cars back. Security. I'd stopped pretending I didn't need it. My apartment felt smaller than ever after Darian's penthouse and Bianca's cold fury. 1 bedroom, a kitchen the size of a closet, and a living room where my mother was asleep on the couch with the TV still on. I pulled a blanket over her, turned off the TV, and went to my room. The meeting with Bianca had been a disaster. She'd threatened me, refused to help, and walked out before I could get any real information. But she'd given me a name, Sorrentinos. I opened my laptop and started searching. The Sorrentinos weren't hard to find. Old money, old grudges, and a history of violence that made my skin crawl. Darian's father had broken an engagement with their daughter 30 years ago, sparking a feud that had nearly destroyed both families. If they were behind this, they weren't just trying to steal money or territory. They were trying to finish what Darian's father had started. I pulled up the access Darian had given me to the hotel group's financial systems and started digging. Transaction logs, vendor payments, offshore accounts, everything was there if I knew how to look. And I did. The pattern emerged slowly, like a shape forming in fog. The $60 million Darian had mentioned wasn't stolen. It was moved, carefully and deliberately, to make it look like theft. But the timing was wrong. The transfers had started 3 months ago, right when the engagement negotiations began. Someone was setting Darian up to look like he was funding something off books. And when the engagement fell apart, it would look like he'd stolen money to support a private war against the Ricci's. The Sorrentinos were playing both sides, and they were doing it beautifully. I should have stopped. Should have closed the laptop and gotten some sleep. But I kept going, building spreadsheets, cross-referencing accounts, following the money trail deeper and deeper. By 3 a.m., I had something solid. Not proof exactly, but a pattern clear enough that someone who knew what to look for could see it. The Sorrentinos had created shell companies that looked legitimate. Vendors, contractors, service providers. They'd use those companies to move money through Darian's hotels, siphoning off funds while making it look like he was the one doing it. It was brilliant, and it was going to destroy him if I couldn't prove it. I saved everything to an encrypted file, sent a copy to my personal email, and finally let myself collapse into bed. My phone buzzed as I was drifting off. A text from an unknown number. You're digging in the wrong places. Stop, or your family pays the price. My blood turned to ice. I sat up, staring at the message. my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. They knew. Whoever was behind this knew I was investigating. And they were threatening my mother and brother. I should have called Darian. Should have told him immediately. But it was 3 a.m, and I was terrified. And the message felt like a noose tightening around my throat. I didn't sleep after that. Just lay there in the dark, listening to every sound, jumping at every creak of the building. When the knock came at 5:30 a.m., I nearly screamed. I stumbled to the door, looked through the peephole, and saw Darian's driver. "Miss Reed," he said when I opened the door. "Mr. Bianchi sent me. He said it was urgent." "What happened?" "He didn't say. Just asked me to bring you to the penthouse immediately." I grabbed my laptop, threw on yesterday's clothes, and followed him down to the waiting SUV. My phone felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket, the threatening text still glowing in my mind. Manhattan was just waking up, the city bathed in pre-dawn gray. We made it to the Langham in 15 minutes, and I took the private elevator up to the penthouse with my stomach in knots. Darian was waiting by the windows again, but this time he wasn't on the phone. He was just standing there, staring out at the city. And when he turned to face me, I saw something in his expression that made my breath catch. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Ricci wants a meeting, tonight, to discuss terms for ending this without bloodshed." I stopped. "That's good, right?" "It would be if I believed he was serious." Darian crossed to me, his gaze sharp. "But someone leaked information about offshore accounts to his people. They think I've been stealing from the engagement fund, planning a war. Ricci's not coming to negotiate. He's coming to threaten." Something cold slid through me. "The Sorrentinos." His eyes narrowed. "What?" "I found something." I set my laptop down on the coffee table with shaking hands. "The 60 million you mentioned, it's not stolen. It's being moved to shell companies, but they're making it look like you're the one doing it. And the timing, it all started when the engagement negotiations began." "Show me." I opened the laptop and pulled up the spreadsheets I'd built overnight, walking him through the pattern. He leaned over my shoulder, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, and I tried to focus on the numbers instead of the way his proximity made my pulse race. "This is solid work," he said finally. "How long did this take you?" "Most of the night." "And you didn't call me?" I swallowed hard. "I got a text at 3 a.m. Someone told me to stop digging or my family would pay the price." The air in the room changed instantly. Darian straightened, his expression going cold and lethal. "Show me." I pulled up the text, hands shaking, and handed him my phone. He read it once, then again, and when he looked up at me, I saw something in his eyes that made me understand exactly why people feared him. "They threatened your family," he said, his voice deadly quiet. "Yes. And you didn't call me." "It was 3 a.m. I don't care what time it is." He moved closer, and I had to tilt my head back to hold his gaze. "If someone threatens you, if someone so much as looks at you wrong, you call me. Immediately. Do you understand?" I didn't want to bother. "Julia." His hand came up to cut my jaw, and the gentleness of the touch contrasted sharply with the fury in his eyes. "You're under my protection now. That means your family is under my protection. And anyone who threatens them is threatening me." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. "I'm sending security to your apartment building," he continued. 2 men on your mother and brother at all times. And you're not going home until we figure out who sent that text. I can't just not go home. You can, and you will." His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I felt my knees go weak. "I have guest rooms here. You'll stay in the penthouse until this is over." "Darian, this isn't negotiable." I should have argued, should have demanded my independence, my right to make my own choices. But the text message kept flashing in my mind, and the thought of something happening to my mother or my brother because of me made my chest tight with panic. "Okay," I whispered. I hated how small it made me feel, but this wasn't about pride anymore. If swallowing my independence was the price of keeping my family alive, I'd pay it. Something shifted in his expression, relief maybe, or satisfaction. His hand was still on my jaw, and we were too close again, the air between us charged with something dangerous. "Good," he said, his voice rough. And then he kissed me. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. His mouth was hot and demanding, And when I gasped, he deepened the kiss, his hand sliding into my hair to angle my head exactly where he wanted it. I should have pulled away, should have remembered that this was fake, that I'd just been threatened, that mixing business with whatever this was would only make everything more complicated. But my body didn't care about logic. My hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and when he backed me against the window, I went willingly, craving the solid weight of him against me. His other hand gripped my hip, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise, and I made a sound I'd never heard myself make. Desperate and needy, and completely beyond my control. "We shouldn't," I breathed against his mouth. "I know." But he didn't stop. His lips moved to my jaw, my throat, finding the spot where my pulse hammered. "Tell me to stop, and I will." I should have said it. Should have been smart and careful and protected myself. But I'd spent my whole life being safe. And right now, with his hands on me and his mouth branding my skin, safe felt like the last thing I wanted. "Don't stop," I whispered. He growled, actually growled, and lifted me, my legs wrapping around his waist as he carried me away from the windows. We made it to the couch before he set me down, his body covering mine, and the weight of him felt like everything I'd been missing without knowing it. His mouth found mine again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back, just heat and hunger and the desperate need to get closer. My shirt was half unbuttoned, his hands on bare skin, when his phone buzzed on the coffee table. We both froze. He pulled back, breathing hard, and grabbed the phone, looked at the screen, cursed. "It's one of my men," he said. "There's activity around your apartment building. Someone's been watching it." Reality came crashing back. I sat up, fumbling with my buttons, my face burning. "My mother is fine. My security got there first." He stood, already making calls, his voice shifting to that cold, controlled tone. "But we need to move her and your brother somewhere safe. Today." "Where?" "I have a property in Brooklyn. Secure building, private security. No one gets in without clearance. They'll stay there until this is over." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he couldn't just uproot my family. But someone had been watching our building. Someone had threatened them. And Darian was the only one with the resources to keep them safe. "Okay," I said. "But I need to explain it to her. I can't just—" "You'll come with me. We'll move them together." He grabbed his jacket, his keys. "And then we're meeting with Ricci tonight. And we're going to end this before anyone else gets hurt." I followed him to the elevator, my mind racing, my body still humming from his touch. Everything was spiraling out of control. The investigation, the threats, whatever was happening between Darian and me. And I had no idea how to stop it. Moving my mother and brother to Darian's Brooklyn property took 3 hours and felt like a hostage negotiation. My mother stood in our tiny Queens apartment, arms crossed, staring at the 2 security guards Darian had sent, while I tried to explain why we needed to leave immediately. "Julia," she said, her voice tight with worry, "you're not making sense. Why would someone be watching our building? What have you gotten yourself into?" I couldn't tell her the truth. Couldn't say, I sat on a Mafia boss's lap as a dare, and now we're pretending to be engaged while someone tries to start a war. So I lied. "There's been some trouble at work. Financial irregularities. I found something I wasn't supposed to. And now the people involved are trying to scare me into staying quiet." "Then go to the police." "Mom, please," my voice cracked. "These people are dangerous. And Darian, my boss, he has resources to keep us safe. Just for a few days, until this gets sorted out." She looked at me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second she decided not to push. "Your boss is sending armed guards and moving us to a secure building because of financial irregularities?" "Yes." "And you expect me to believe that?" "I expect you to trust me." I took her hands. "Please, just pack a bag. You and Danny. I promise I'll explain everything when this is over." My brother Danny appeared in the doorway, 14 and all sharp angles and suspicion. "Are we in danger?" "No," I said quickly. "We're being careful, that's all." He looked at the security guards, then back at me. "This is because of that guy, isn't it? The one who's been sending the fancy car." My insides lurched. like an elevator dropping too fast. What? I've seen it. Black SUV, tinted windows. It's been parked outside our building for 2 days. Danny's eyes narrowed. Who is he, Julia? Someone who's trying to help, or someone who's trying to control you? The accuracy of that statement hit me like a punch. Pack a bag, I said, my voice firmer now. Both of you. We're leaving in 20 minutes. The Brooklyn property was a converted brownstone in Brooklyn Heights, all exposed, brick and hardwood floors and windows that overlooked the waterfront. It had 3 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and security cameras on every entrance. My mother took one look at it and said, Julia, what exactly does your boss do? He owns hotels. And pays for places like this for his employees? I'm helping him with something important. She gave me a look that said she didn't believe a word of it, but she was too exhausted to argue. Danny disappeared into one of the bedrooms without a word, and I spent 30 minutes getting them settled before Darian's driver came to take me back to Manhattan. The meeting with Don Ricci was set for 8 p.m. at one of Darian's private clubs in Midtown. I had 4 hours to prepare, which meant 4 hours to spiral into anxiety about everything that could go wrong. Darian was waiting in the penthouse when I got back, standing by the windows again, like that was his default setting. He'd changed into a different suit, charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, and he looked every inch the dangerous man he was. Your family settled? He asked without turning around. As settled as they can be, given that I just uprooted their entire lives. They're safe. That's what matters. I moved to stand beside him, looking out at the city. What happens tonight? Ricci comes in angry, accuses me of stealing from the engagement fund and planning a war. I show him your evidence, explain that we've both been set up by the Sorrentinos, and either he believes me or what? Or we have a different kind of problem. He finally looked at me, and something in his expression made my chest tight. You're not coming to the meeting. Excuse me. It's too dangerous. If Ricci doesn't believe me, if he thinks you're part of the setup, he'll what? Kill me? I'm already a target, Darian. At least at the meeting I'll know what's happening. No. You don't get to make that decision for me. Yes, I do. He turned to face me fully. You're under my protection, which means I decide what risks you take. And I'm not putting you in a room with Ricci when he's looking for someone to blame. I found the evidence, I snapped. I spent all night building those spreadsheets. If anyone should be there to present them, it's me. Julia, no. You don't get to lock me away like I'm fragile. I'm not some princess in a tower. I'm the person who figured out what the Sorrentinos are doing, and I deserve to be part of stopping them. He stared at me, jaw tight, and I could see the war happening behind his eyes, the urge to protect me versus the recognition that I was right. Fine, he said finally. But you stay next to me the entire time. You don't speak unless I tell you to. And if anything goes wrong, you run. Understood? Understood. I mean it, Julia. If I tell you to run, you don't argue, you don't hesitate. You just go. The intensity in his voice made something twist in my chest. Okay. He nodded, then reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear, the gesture so unexpectedly gentle that I forgot to breathe. I can't lose you, he said quietly. You barely know me. That doesn't seem to matter. The words hung between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to examine. His phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He checked it, and his expression went dark. What? I asked. Bianca just sent a message. She wants to meet before Ricci arrives. Did she say why? No, just that she has information we need to see. He looked at me. Could be a trap. Or she could have finished her own investigation and found proof about the Sorrentinos. Maybe. He didn't look convinced. Either way, we're meeting her at 7. That gives us an hour before Ricci shows up. Bianca was waiting in a private room at the club when we arrived. And the second I saw her face, I knew something had changed. She looked tired. Not physically. Her suit was still immaculate, her makeup perfect. But there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there at the restaurant. Something that looked almost like fear. Thank you for coming, she said, and her voice was different too. Less ice, more steel. Darian moved to stand between us, protective even now. You said you had information. I do. Bianca pulled out a tablet, swiped through something, then turned it to face us. After our conversation, Julia, I did some digging of my own. The Sorrentinos have been very careful, but they made one mistake. She pulled up a series of documents, contracts, payment schedules, shell company registrations. They've been moving money through both our operations, she continued, making it look like Darian's stealing from me, and making it look like my father's been skimming from the engagement fund to pay off old debts. They wanted us at each other's throats so badly that we wouldn't notice them positioning themselves to take over half of Manhattan. Ice slid down my spine. How much have they taken? Close to 100 million between both families. Bianca's jaw was tight. And they're not done. They've been buying up property, paying off key players, setting up supply chain disruptions. By the time we figured it out, they'd have gutted us both. Darian's expression was murderous. Why are you showing us this? Because Julia was right. Bianca looked at me, and for the first time, there was no hostility in her gaze. Someone set this up, and I'm not going to let the Sorrentinos destroy everything my family built because I was too proud to see past a broken engagement. So what do you want? Darian asked. I want to take them down. Together. She closed the tablet. My father's on his way here. He thinks he's coming to threaten you into submission. But if we can show him this, prove that the Sorrentinos are the real enemy, then we can redirect his anger where it belongs. And the engagement? I asked before I could stop myself. Bianca's smile was sharp. Is still broken. I'm not interested in marrying someone who'd throw me away the second a pretty girl sat on his lap. But I am interested in making sure the Sorrentinos pay for using me as a pawn. Darian studied her for a long moment. If this is a trap, then I'm an idiot, Bianca cut in. Because I'm giving you everything I have. Every piece of evidence, every transaction, every shell company. If you wanted to destroy me, you could do it with what's on this tablet. She held it out. Darian took it, scrolled through the files, and I watched his expression shift from suspicion to grim satisfaction. This is good, he said finally. Better than what we have. I know, Bianca looked at me again. You were right to face me at the restaurant. It took courage. Stupid courage, maybe, but courage nonetheless. I didn't know what to say to that. My father will be here in 20 minutes, Bianca continued. When he arrives, let me talk first. He's more likely to listen if I'm the one presenting the evidence. Once he understands we've been played, we can discuss terms for a real alliance, one based on mutual interest, not a marriage contract. Darian nodded slowly. Agreed. Bianca stood, smoothed her suit. And Julia, thank you for not giving up, for pushing when it would have been easier to walk away. She left before I could respond, and I stood there feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. She helped us, I said, still trying to process it. She helped herself, Darian corrected. But yes, for now, we're on the same side. Do you trust her? No, but I trust the evidence. He looked down at the tablet. The Sorrentinos have been planning this for months, maybe years, and they almost got away with it. What happens now? Now we wait for Ricci, show him what his daughter found, and hope he's smart enough to see past his pride. Darian's hand found mine, fingers lacing through. And then we end this. Don Ricci arrived at exactly 8 p.m. with 6 guards and an expression that promised violence. Bianca met him at the door, spoke quietly, and I watched his face cycle through fury, confusion, and finally, cold calculation as she led him to the private room where Darian and I waited. You have 5 minutes to explain, Ricci said, his voice like gravel. And then I'm done listening. Bianca handed him the tablet. The Sorrentinos have been stealing from both our families. They set up Julia's stunt at the bar to break the engagement and turn us against each other while they moved $100 million out from under us. Ricci stared at the screen, scrolling through documents, and the silence stretched so tight I thought it might snap. Antonio Sorrentino, he said finally, and the name came out like a curse. That bastard's been bleeding us dry. For months, Darian confirmed. And he would have kept going if Julia hadn't caught the pattern in my accounts. Ricci looked at me for the first time, really looked at me, and I fought the urge to step back. You found this? He asked. Yes, sir. You're an accountant? Junior accountant, for the hotel group. He studied me for another long moment, then turned back to Darian. So the girl sitting on your lap, that was Sorrentino's play. Yes. And you really called off the engagement over her, or was that part of the setup too? The question hung in the air, and I felt Darian's hand tighten around mine. I called it off, he said slowly, because I won't be manipulated into a marriage I don't want. Not by the Sorrentinos, not by tradition, and not by a contract. But Julia had nothing to do with that decision. She was a victim in this, same as we were. It wasn't quite the truth, but it was close enough. Ricci grunted. The Sorrentinos played us all. Question is, what do we do about it? We take everything they have, Bianca said, her voice sharp with fury. Every property, every account, every asset they've stolen. We make an example of them so no one ever tries this again. Agreed, Ricci looked at Darian. But that means working together. Can you put aside your pride long enough to partner with my family? Can you put aside yours long enough to accept that the engagement is over? Darian shot back. For a moment, I thought Ricci might explode. Then he laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. My daughter's too good for you anyway, Bianchi. But yes, for now, we work together. We destroy the Sorrentinos, recover what they've stolen, and then we renegotiate terms for a real alliance, one that doesn't require my daughter to marry a man who'd throw her away. Fair enough. They shook hands, and I watched an alliance form in real time. Fragile, built on mutual anger and survival, but real nonetheless. We move tomorrow, Ricci said. I'll need the full evidence package, access to your security team, and a list of Sorrentino assets we can target. Done, Ricci nodded, then looked at me one more time. You've got spine, girl. Most people would have run the second this got complicated. You stayed and fought. I didn't have much choice, I said honestly. There's always a choice. He turned to leave, his guards following like shadows. Make sure she stays safe, Bianchi. We need her brain if we're going to untangle this mess. And then he was gone, and it was just Darian, Bianca, and me in the private room. Well, Bianca said, that went better than expected. He didn't kill anyone, Darian agreed. I'm calling it a win. Bianca looked at me, and something that might have been respect flickered in her eyes. You did good work, Julia. My father's right. You have spine. Don't let Darian here make you forget that. She left before I could respond, and suddenly it was just the two of us. We did it, I said, the adrenaline finally starting to fade. We actually convinced them to work together. You did it, Darian corrected. If you hadn't found the evidence, hadn't pushed for the meeting with Bianca, none of this would have happened. I just did what anyone would. No. He moved closer, his hands coming up to frame my face. You did what no one else could. You walked into a world you didn't understand and found the one thread that unraveled everything. You faced Bianca even though she wanted to destroy you. You stood up to me when I tried to protect you. He stopped, and something in his expression made my breath catch. I'm what? I whispered. Everything I didn't know I needed, he said roughly. And the one thing I can't afford to lose. Then he kissed me, and this time it felt different. Not desperate or urgent, but deep and consuming, like he was trying to memorize the taste of me. When we finally broke apart, I was shaking. What happens now? I asked. Now we go after the Sorrentinos. We take back what they stole, and we make sure they never threaten you or your family again. And after that? His hands were still on my face, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. After that, we figure out what this is, what we are. We're fake, I reminded him, even though my voice shook. This engagement, it was just to stop a war. The engagement was fake, he agreed. But this, he kissed me again, softer this time. This isn't. I wanted to believe him, wanted to think that a man like Darian Bianchi could actually want someone like me for real. But Bianca's words kept echoing in my head. He'll always choose power over love. It's who he is, and I couldn't let myself forget that. The Sorrentino takedown happened fast and surgical, like watching a building implode in slow motion. Darian, Ricci, and Bianca coordinated their moves over 48 hours, while I stayed in the penthouse, watching the city and waiting for news. My family was safe in Brooklyn. My job was somehow still intact. Darian had made a single phone call to HR, and my probation had been extended pending special project completion. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting to see if I'd fall or fly. The call came at midnight on the second day. "It's done," Darian said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "Sorrentino's been arrested. Federal charges, fraud, money laundering, racketeering. The evidence you found gave the FBI everything they needed. His assets are frozen, his operations shut down, and anyone who is working with him is scrambling to cut deals." I sank onto the couch, the tension I'd been holding for days finally releasing. "And my family? Safe. The threat's over. You can go home whenever you want. Whenever I want." The words hung in the air between us, heavy with everything we hadn't said. "I'll be back in an hour," he continued. "We need to talk." He hung up before I could respond. Darian looked different when he walked through the penthouse doors an hour later. Still dangerous, still powerful, but there was something in his expression I hadn't seen before. Uncertainty, maybe, or fear that he was about to lose something that mattered. "It's really over?" I asked. "The Sorrentinos are finished. Ricci and I have an alliance that doesn't require a marriage contract. Bianca's already negotiating new terms that give her more autonomy in her family's operations." He moved to stand by the windows, his usual position. "You did that. You saw the pattern no one else could see, and you had the courage to face people who wanted you dead. You saved both our families. I just did what needed to be done." "No." He turned to face me. "You did what no one else would have done. You walked into a world that should have terrified you, and you didn't just survive. You changed everything." I stood, crossed to him, suddenly needing to be closer. "So what happens now? The fake engagement, do we just tell everyone it's over, that it was all a misunderstanding? We could," his hands found my waist, pulling me against him. "Or we could make it real." My heart stuttered. "Darian, I know what I said that first night. That this was fake, that you were just playing a role, but somewhere between you sitting on my lap and you standing up to Bianca, and you spending all night building spreadsheets to save my life." He stopped, and I saw something raw in his eyes. I stopped pretending. "You don't do love," I whispered. "You said your father's mistake was choosing love over power, and you swore you'd never repeat it." I was wrong. His hands tightened on my waist. "My father's mistake wasn't loving someone. It was loving someone who didn't love him back enough to stay when things got hard. But you stayed when any sane person would have run. You fought for your family, for your dignity, for your right to be part of the solution instead of just a problem to be solved." And I realized something. What? That power without someone worth protecting is just emptiness. He cupped my face, and I felt myself leaning into his touch despite everything. "You're not a weakness, Julia. You're the only thing that makes any of this worth fighting for." I wanted to believe him, wanted to think this could work, but reality was still reality. "I'm a junior accountant from Queens," I said. "You're a mafia boss who owns half of Manhattan. We don't make sense. We make perfect sense." He kissed me, soft and deep, and I felt my resistance crumbling. "You see patterns, I create structure. You ask the questions I'm too arrogant to consider. I have the resources to protect what you love. Together, we're stronger than we are apart." "Together," I repeated, testing the word. "What does that look like? Do I stay in your penthouse and pretend my old life doesn't exist? Do I quit my job and become some kind of, mafia wife?" "No." He pulled back enough to look at me directly. "You keep your job if you want it. Or you take a better one. I have 3 hotels that need financial oversight. And you just proved you're better at it than anyone on my payroll. You keep your apartment in Queens if that matters to you. You see your mother and brother whenever you want. You live your life, Julia. I'm just asking to be part of it. And when people come after you, when the next threat emerges and I'm a target again, then I protect you, same as I'd protect anyone I love." He said it so simply, like love was just a fact. "But you're not fragile, and I'm not going to treat you like you are. You proved you can handle this world. The question is whether you want to." I thought about the past few days. The terror, yes, but also the rush of figuring out the Sorrentino scheme. The satisfaction of facing Bianca and earning her respect. The way I'd stood in that room with Don Ricci and Darian and Bianca, and felt like I belonged there, not because I was someone's accessory, but because I'd earned my place. I thought about going back to my tiny apartment, my quiet accounting job, my invisible life, and I realized I didn't want to. I'm not saying yes to being your wife, I said slowly. Not yet. That's too much, too fast. His expression didn't change, but I felt him tense. But I'm saying yes to staying, to seeing what this is when we're not running from threats or pretending for other people, to being your partner in business, in this world, in whatever comes next. Julia, on one condition. I met his gaze directly. You don't make decisions for me. You don't lock me away when things get dangerous. You don't treat me like something that needs to be protected instead of someone who can stand beside you. We're equals, or we're nothing. A smile broke across his face, genuine and unguarded in a way I'd never seen. Equals. Equals, I confirmed. He kissed me again, and this time it felt different. Not desperate or urgent, but solid. Real, like a promise we were both choosing to make. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. Stay here tonight. Not because you have to, but because you want to. I want to. He lifted me, and I wrapped my legs around his waist as he carried me away from the windows, past the living room, down a hallway I hadn't explored yet. His bedroom was dark and simple. More windows overlooking the city, a massive bed, everything in shades of gray and black. He set me down carefully, his hands framing my face. Are you sure? I'm sure. What happened next was slow and deliberate, the opposite of every urgent, stolen moment before. His hands traced my curves like he was memorizing them. His mouth found every place that made me gasp. And when we finally came together, the city lights blazing beyond the windows, it felt less like falling and more like choosing to leap. After, when we were tangled together in sheets that probably cost more than my monthly rent, I traced the tattoo on his forearm, an intricate design of a serpent wrapped around a sword. What does it mean? I asked. That power without wisdom is just destruction. He caught my hand, brought it to his lips. I got it when I took over from my father, a reminder not to make his mistakes. And did you make his mistakes? I think I made different ones. He pulled me closer. I spent so long trying not to be him that I almost missed the one thing he got right. Which was? That some things are worth the risk. He kissed my temple. Some people are worth changing everything for. I didn't have words for that, so I just held him, feeling his heartbeat against my cheek, watching the city lights blur into morning. 3 months later, I stood in Darian's office, our office now, reviewing financial reports for the hotel expansion in Boston. My title was officially Director of Financial Operations, and I'd just hired 2 junior accountants to help handle the workload. My mother's medication was covered by the health insurance that came with my new position. Danny was still in his school, but now he had a tutor twice a week. Our apartment in Queens was still ours, but I spent most nights in the penthouse. The fake engagement had quietly dissolved. No announcement, just a gradual understanding that we were together, but not rushing toward marriage. Bianca had called once to congratulate me on surviving Darian Bianchi, and to offer lunch when she was next in Manhattan. Don Ricci had sent a gift basket to my mother with a card that read, "For raising a daughter with spine." I'd gone from invisible to someone people noticed when I walked into a room. And the strange thing was, I didn't feel like I'd lost myself in Darian's world. I'd found the parts of myself I'd been too afraid to acknowledge. The woman who could face threats and solve impossible problems and demand to be heard. Darian walked in as I was finishing the last report, crossed to me, and kissed the top of my head. Ricci just confirmed the partnership agreement. We're officially allied for the next 5 years. Good. I saved the document, closed my laptop. And the Sorrentino appeals? Denied. Antonio's going to prison for the rest of his life. He pulled me to my feet, hands settling on my waist. It's over, Julia. Really over. So what do we do now? Now we live. He kissed me properly, deep and thorough. We build something that lasts. We make sure no one ever threatens what's ours again. Ours, I repeated. And the word felt right. I'd started this story as a scared junior accountant who took a dare for $50. I was ending it as a woman who'd walked into the fire and come out forged into something stronger. A woman who'd learned that power wasn't something you were born into. It was something you claimed, one impossible choice at a time. And standing there in Darian Bianchi's arms, overlooking the city that had almost destroyed us both. I finally understood what it meant to be powerful. It meant knowing exactly who you were and refusing to apologize for it. It meant choosing love without losing yourself. It meant standing in the dark and claiming your right to survive. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe so you don't miss the next Mafia love story. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what you thought of this narrator. Your feedback really helps me make these even better for you. Thank you for letting my stories keep you company. It truly means more than you know.